Welcome to Networking RX, a podcast devoted to helping business professionals like you enhance your networking skills in order to become more proficient giving and receiving quality business referrals and improving the overall quality of your life and the lives of those around you. The Networking RX podcast is a production of AmSpirit Business Connections, an organization whose mission is to empower business success through networking.
I think I might have shared this story before. I can't really remember. This is episode 540 something. I don't know. I come back and number them later, so I don't exactly know where I am in the cycle. Anyhow, I've done a lot of podcasts. I'm in the 540s, maybe 550s. Anyhow, doesn't matter. So I might have shared this before because I've just covered a lot of material and recycled material, recycle stories to make points. But I remember I was riding the bus to school. I grew up in a little town in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, Houghton, Michigan, and we lived on the outskirts of town, about 4 or 5 miles from the school. And so you took the bus to school every day. And if you've taken the bus to school every day, it's the same cast of characters on the bus. We called ourselves the Bramer Road District because we all lived within shouting distance or a decent hike of Bramer Road. At any rate, so you're riding the bus and you get to know these people, and there's conflict. It's a little community, and obviously the community changes every year. You have people graduating, and it was a K through 12 bus, and so you have kindergartners coming on and seniors graduating. But you're on there with the same people for years. And there was one particular person that I knew. He was a grade behind me, and you don't have assigned seats, but people kind of but they're kind of assigned, right? It's kind of this pecking order where you sit. And so there was this guy who was a grade behind me, and we sat near each other. And at any rate, there was one point, I forget what it was, but we were just kind of bickering. And I know it was winter, it's Houghton, Michigan. It's about as far north in Michigan as you can go. So winter comes early, but I was wearing gloves, and he said something to me, and I was ahead of him getting off. And I turned and I punched him in the face. I don't know why. That's just so not me. I punched him in the face. He didn't bleed or anything like that. Not that that matters at all, right? Not that I was prone to violence or anything. But I just turned and I punched him in the face. And he was startled. I was startled too, because it just was so not me to get upset like that. And I can get my buttons pushed, but was just so not me, because I really wasn't that angry. And I remember in the moment just knowing that I was wrong. And I immediately started to apologize. Oh, I am so sorry. I didn't mean to do that, which is, well, what did you mean to do? You punched him in the face. And it wasn't terrible. Again, I'm making excuses. I was wearing gloves. I just remember wearing gloves, and so it wasn't like I really connected. But I punched him in the face, and I was immediately apologetic to him. And if you were with us last week, I talked about how to make the perfect apology. I was talking about research done at the Ohio State University by Professor Roy Lewicki, and he had done some research about the six components of an effective apology: express regret, explanation of what went wrong, acknowledge responsibility, declaration of repentance, offer of repair, request for forgiveness. And I don't necessarily listen to the episode last week. I'm not trying to make excuses with respect to my transgression of punching this kid in the face. I don't really need to go, did I acknowledge responsibility, which is the most effective thing. It's just acknowledgement of your responsibility. And offer of repair, I don't know what the repair could be. Hey, Tommy punched me in the face. Make it equal. That's not the purpose of this. Go listen to last week's episode on the effective apologies. What I want to talk to in this episode is not the effectiveness of apologies, but just the power of apologies. And how powerful are our apologies? Here I am. I've punched this kid in the face. I feel really bad. I feel really, really bad. I just, it sticks with me to this day how bad I felt. But how effective was that apology? Now, what got me thinking about this was another article that I received from Cyblog. It's a publication that I've subscribed to. If you really enjoy this sort of thing, I would recommend subscribing to it. It's really inexpensive. I think it's like $60 a year. It's way better than getting the paper, our local paper, the Columbus Dispatch or whatever local paper. It's just, I mean, it's just so insightful. Um, but what they talk about in there, the name of the article is how powerful is an apology, and I would put the link to this in the show notes, but it's a paid subscription, so unless you're a member, you're not going to be able to see it. Um, I'll try and get something in there so you can go ahead and can subscribe to this. But what they did, this was a study that was done. It was published in Psychology Science um, by a Dutch psychologist, David de Kremer. And they had a hunch that receiving an apology was not as powerful as people might think. So what they did was they did a study. In the study, participants played a trust game. Um, each was given €10 and paired up with a partner who was actually in on the experiment. So in other words, if you're playing it, the person you're playing is in on the experiment. And participants were told if they gave all the cash to their partner, it would be tripled. It would be tripled. Then their partner would decide how much of the 300 euro or €30 to share with them. In fact, the experimental insider, the person you would be playing with, only gave back €5. So the participants felt cheated. Hey, I put 10 in. I'm only getting 5 back. And this setup meant the experimenters could test the effectiveness of an apology. I mean, basically what they've done is the insider, the Confederate, as it's termed in the study, it knows they are doing wrong. They're just setting it up so they have a reason to apologize. Um, and then goes on to say here as I'm reading, however, only half the participants received an actual apology, while the rest just imagined receiving one. Then participants then rated either the imagined policy or the actual policy on a scale of 1 to 7 on the basis of how reconciling and valuable it was. I don't know why they use 1 to 7. I don't. Maybe I'll explore that at some point. Why 1 to 10 seems to make so much more sense, but then again, 1 to 10 is, to me, 1 to 5 is plenty. But this is what they do. These people aren't going by the seat of their pants. Somebody has determined that 1 to 7 makes the most sense. But participants who merely imagined the apology thought it would be an average of 5.3, but those who actually received the apology only gave it a 3.5. And so this confirmed the experimenter's suspicion that people consistently overestimate the value of an apology. When their cheating partner actually says sorry, it was never as good as they would have imagined, is what I'm quoting there. And I find it interesting that apologies alone are not enough. And again, it goes back to the 6 components of an effective apology. Just expressing regret is not enough. There needs to be more to it. And I think back, and that got me thinking back to this incident on the bus, is that, okay, you know what? I punched this kid in the face. Yeah, I said sorry. I felt bad. I don't know what else I could have done. There were really no damages, so I guess he could have hit me, as I indicated before. But the one thing I remember from that, and it kind of got me thinking about this whole thing, is that was always between us from that point forward. There was always, we were still friends. We still rode the bus together. We played football together. So we lived in the same area, which meant we hitchhiked home together. I know that sounds really odd, but you have to understand Houghton, Michigan, that hitchhiking is pretty normal, or at least was normal then. And we would hitchhike home together. But that was always there. And I'm sure it was always in his mind that, you know what, Frank could punch me in the face. And it was always kind of in my mind. I can't say it was in his mind, but I can certainly say it was in my mind that I was always very guarded around him, to know that, at one point he said something to trigger me to punch him in the face, and I never wanted to do that again. I never talked about it with him other than just saying I'm sorry right after the fact. But I always kind of felt it was there. So, that's certainly one aspect of this, is why an apology is probably not as effective as we might think it is. Now, I'm quoting again here from Cyblog, the newsletter. It's certainly not true to say that apologies are useless. Apologies acknowledge the existence of social rules and the breaking of those rules. If sincere, apologies can restore the dignity of the victim and the standing of the transgressor. People are much better off to apologize and take responsibility for their action than try and make excuses or deny that it was a mistake. And psychology research backs that up, and that refers back to the post, or the episode I did last week, the 6 components of an effective apology. While apologies serve as a useful function as a first step, we usually overestimate the work they can do in repairing a relationship. That's why it's so irritating when a public figure apologizes and then acts like the matter is finished, unquote. And that is very true. We see these public apologies by public figures all the time. There's been many as of late, and that's how this particular newsletter started out. It kind of talked about that. People have these transgressions. I'm sorry, I will do better. It misses a lot of the effective elements of the transgression. And certainly it kind of touches on here that when people are forced into giving an apology, that it's almost worse. It becomes insincere, and that's just it makes it worse. It just makes it worse. And I think often it makes it worse, certainly when public figures, not necessarily politicians, but it might be actors, it might be just people who are public in nature. The reason it makes it worse is it's less about apologizing for the transgression and more being apologetic and sorry that they got caught. And I think that's how a lot of times people see that. I'm sorry that I did this and this, I will do better. It's like, well, it's just, you just know it's kind of, it's contrived. In fact, it talks about some other research in here. It says researchers observed that we tend to spot an insincere apology more easily and are likely to reject it. Us humans, we ain't dumb, right? We're not dumb. We see when somebody's apologizing, and if it's sincere or not sincere, or somebody's reading a statement that somebody else has prepared for them, that they don't talk like that. We see those things, and in my mind, it makes it worse. So the point is that a sincere apology for whatever, punching somebody in the face, or saying something about somebody, or cheating them in a game, or whatever it is really just the start of the process. And it's just, you obviously need to be genuine. Refer back to my episode from last week of the 6 effective components of an apology. We all make transgressions. We all do things. We all stub our toes. Hardly a week goes by where I don't screw up. Now, it's been a long time since I punched somebody in the face, and I truly regret it. Still to this day, 50 years gone by. But we just need to, with respect to our relationships, business and personal, really need to double down on being effective with respect to our apologies, because we're going to need them. It's just part of life. And if you think you don't need to make apologies, that's probably the first thing you need to fix. It's just, and I do run into people from time to time, I'm not going to apologize. I think there's always a reason for us to find some fault in what we've done, and to set about becoming effective in being apologetic for our actions or inactions. Just something to think about. Have a great day.
Thanks for joining us on the Networking RX podcast. Please put what you've learned into action today, and let us know if you have questions, comments, or ideas for future topics. You can email them to us at podcast@amspirit.com. That's AmSpirit.com. Finally, so you never miss an episode, be sure to subscribe to the Networking RX podcast through iTunes, Overcast, or however you receive your podcasts. Now get out and network with someone.
The Networking RX podcast is the copyright production of AmSpirit Business Connection. All rights reserved.